Now let's understand what Candida associated lesions are. First one is denture stomatitis. The most common site for this is of course denture bearing palatal mucosa. There are three types of denture stomatitis. Type 1 includes minor erythematous sites caused by trauma from the dentures. Type 2 affects a major part of the denture covered mucosa, and type 3 includes the features of type 2, and in addition to that there is granular mucosa. Denture stomatitis is seen in up to 75% of denture wearers, and often there are no clinical symptoms. The main predisposing factors are poor denture hygiene, ill-fitting dentures, and wearing dentures continuously even at night. As you know, the saliva has a flushing action on microorganisms, but because of the denture that is covering the mucosa, it can't do its job. The denture creates a stagnant area where the desquamated epithelial cells keep collecting. They serve as a source of nitrogen, which is essential for the growth of Candida. Also, in ill-fitting dentures, there is frictional irritation that can damage the oral mucosa and provide an entry for the Candida to enter the mucosa. Plus, as we have seen earlier, Candida can form biofilm. So, on the denture, it can adhere to it and form a biofilm. So, it creates a reservoir for the Candida organisms. Therefore, in this case, clinical management is focused on removing this biofilm and preventing recolonization and relapse. Next is angular cheilitis. As the name suggests, it affects the angles or commissures of the mouth. It's commonly associated with denture stomatitis or other pre-existing oral candidiasis. So, from the oral cavity, it spreads towards the angles of the mouth. Clinically, we see redness, fissuring or crusting of the angles of the mouth. It can occur unilaterally, but most often it is bilateral. Frequently, the lesions are co-infected with Staphylococcus aureus. The predisposing factors are loss of vertical dimension as seen in elderly. So, there are folds near the angles of the mouth, and these folds can act as sites where the infection can develop. Other factors are vitamin B12 deficiency, iron deficiency, and atopy, meaning genetic predisposition to allergy. The third Candida associated lesion is median rhomboid glossitis. The name itself gives a lot of information. Glossitis means inflammation of the tongue. Median means it occurs on the center of the posterior part of the tongue, and the shape is like that of a rhombus. This area of redness on the tongue is because of atrophy of the filiform papillae. The predisposing factors for this is smoking, denture wearing, and inhaled steroids. Sometimes an erythematous lesion is also present on the palatal mucosa. This is also called as kissing lesions. So this was about primary form of candidiasis. The secondary infections are those that are accompanied by systemic manifestations. In this we have chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis. It's a group of disorders. So in addition to oral candidiasis, it also affects the skin, nail bed, other mucosal linings, face and scalp. Granulomatous masses can be seen at these sites. Chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis can also occur as a part of endocrine disorders like hyperparathyroidism and Addison's disease. Patients with severe combined immunodeficiency syndrome also frequently develop systemic candidal infection. These patients often don't respond to standard antifungal therapies and have an increased susceptibility to developing oral squamous cell carcinoma. Coming to diagnosis of oral candidiasis, the diagnosis is based on both clinical features and lab findings. Sometimes antifungal therapy has to be started to assist in the diagnosis process. Let's look at some of the methods of isolation of Candida. First is smear. So here the area is scraped and smeared directly on the slide. It's simple and quick, but it has low sensitivity. Second is swab. Cotton-tipped swabs are rubbed over the lesion and sent to the lab. This is also relatively simple, but disadvantage is that selecting which site to swab is important and critical. Next is imprint culture. This involves sterile plastic foam pads dipped into saborod broth. It's placed on the lesion for 60 seconds and then this pad is pressed on the sab agar plate and incubated at 37 degrees Celsius. The result is expressed as colony forming units per cubic millimeter. This method is sensitive and reliable. It can also differentiate between infected and carrier states. The disadvantage is that if there are no clinical signs, it's difficult to select the site. Next is impression culture. So first we have to make maxillary and mandibular impressions with alginate and then casting is done in agar fortified with saborod broth. This is helpful for determining the relative distribution of the yeast on the oral surfaces. It's used mostly as a research tool. Next is salivary culture. It's as useful as imprint culture. In this method, the patient spits around 2 ml of saliva into a sterile container. The saliva is taken on sab agar and patients who display clinical signs of oral candidiasis usually have more than 400 colony forming units per ml. Disadvantage is that it takes considerable chair-side time and it's not useful for patients with xerostomia, and with this method we cannot identify the site of infection. Let's come to the management part. First is removal of the cause. For example, if the reason is smoking cessation can result in disappearance of the lesions even without antifungal treatment. If the reason is dentures, then replacement or relining of the denture can be done. Patient should be instructed on taking care of the dentures and proper cleaning of it and should be told not to use it at night. Sometimes dentures have porosities which are difficult to clean, so dentures should be kept in antimicrobial solution during the night. Topical treatments are preferred because it limits systemic absorption, but the results depend on patient compliance. Let's have a look at some topical treatments. Nystatin preparations include nystatin cream, which is applied to the affected area 3 to 4 times per day for 7 days. Nystatin oral pastille is also available. It is nothing but a pill that can be lightly chewed and dissolved in the mouth. So, one pastille is to be dissolved in the mouth slowly after meals 4 times per day, usually for 7 days. Nystatin oral suspension can be used as an oral rinse 4 times a day for 7 days. Amphotericin B comes in a lozenge form which has 10 mg of the drug. This is to be slowly dissolved in the mouth 3 to 4 times a day after meals for a minimum of 2 weeks. It also comes as an oral suspension which has 100 mg per ml of the drug. It is placed in the mouth after meals and retained near the lesions 4 times a day for 2 weeks. Clotrimazole is available as cream which is to be applied to the affected area 2 to 3 times a day for 3 to 4 weeks. It also has anti-staphylococcal activity. Miconazole is available as oral gel and also as a cream. It can be applied twice a day and the treatment should be continued for 10 to 14 days after the lesion heals. It also has antibacterial activity and theoretically it is the best antifungal to treat angular cheilitis. Systemic treatment includes antifungal drugs which can be taken orally. So that includes ketoconazole tablets. 200 to 400 milligrams tablet should be taken once or twice daily with food for 2 weeks. Fluconazole is available as 50 to 100 milligram capsule and the dosage is once daily for 2 to 3 weeks. Similarly, itraconazole 100 milligram capsule has to be taken daily for 2 weeks. All of these drugs are contraindicated in pregnancy and liver disease. So guys, this was about oral candidiasis. This is a very important topic in oral medicine and can be asked even as a long answer question. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel and also hit the bell icon. And I'll see you next Thursday. Until then, keep studying and keep learning.